you've packed the powder keg and you're going to light it and you're not sure if it's going to blow up or blow out.
When we all just chip in just a little bit, just $1, look at the impact that we can have.
In addition to just building cool barns, like our mission is always like impact over income.
Whether it's money, whether it's time, it really doesn't matter. Just being generous and serving people in your community, I think, can have a tremendous impact for corporations.
All right, guys. So today is a pretty cool episode because I got my man Pete Wilson on here with me, and he's coming in from Nashville, so or near Nashville, right? So, yeah, Pete. So let's just start out. Like, tell everybody who you are and what you do.
Yeah. So my name is Pete Wilson, and I'm an executive coach. That's what I spend a lot of my time doing, at least Monday through Friday. That's what I do. And I also speak a lot. I speak at different corporate events. Also speak at some churches. And so I'm a former full-time pastor. Did that for a couple decades, and then transitioned. I don't know, probably. I think it's been about 7 years ago. Transitioned into the executive life coach space, and absolutely love it.
Yeah, man. I first met you years ago at a Sticks conference for church planners. Yep. Down in Orangeburg, South Carolina. And I just remember, like, it was super impactful for me, especially in the space I was in then, like, just listening to strategy and all that. And you've always had a really good, brain and mind behind, like, growth and getting people's energy around it and building teams and all that kind of stuff. And then lo and behold, one day, somebody comes in and was like talking about the Wilsons or this and that, and this Pete Wilson guy. And I was like, man, I know a Pete Wilson. It can't be that guy. And it was you. And I was like, no way.
It's me.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, we're building a Barndo, man. And we found the best to help us out. So
yeah, dude, it was kind of surreal. Me and my wife were laughing like, what a small and crazy world that would happen.
And then fast forward a couple months, you got to come out and visit the property where we're going to build. And we're just standing out there in the middle of nowhere, literally the middle of nowhere, having a great conversation. Who would have thought our lives would have crossed paths like that again?
Yeah, I know, man. It's kind of crazy. But what was cool, and like one of the things that I definitely wanted to get on here and talk about, because I know it's a passion of yours as well, is like giving, and like just pouring into people, but also just pouring into calls, and so our company is founded around, our core values and the N in Barndo's never stop giving. And it's just like a rock inside of our organization. And it's been really cool because in addition to just building cool barns, like our mission is always like impact over income. And so early on we were like, how can we connect with someone or something bigger than just building houses, or having some kind of revenue target, or what is growth? And we decided to measure it more by impact than just simply top line income. And one of the ways we do that is locally we partner with Carolina Miracle League, which is it's an adaptive baseball league for special needs children, and we pour out into it. And so I just wanted to kind of lean into that a little bit about not just starting businesses, because we have tons of people watch that want to build Barndos. Some people are asking like, what do we stand for? What are we about? But also we have a lot of like entrepreneurs and, people who are looking at what we did. And I promise you, if we can do it, you can do it. And so one of those things is just, finding something bigger than yourself to dive into. And that's been you all day, man. From, I remember reading Plan B, man, like, just, stacking on top of that. And like, so I know you do a lot outside of your corporate gigs with helping people get attached to giving and do different things like that. So I just wanted to lean into that, man, and hear some of your perspective on the power of giving and getting behind stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, I think it's huge. And, I could talk about this for hours. And I think more and more even for-profit companies are discovering the power of generosity and what it can do for their employees as well as their customers, as far as not just their image but building trust. And it's funny, we're in the loan process right now, and I know you guys have talked about that on the podcast. And
Yeah.
it's you're meeting with all these different bankers, and one of the first things they ask is, tell us about your builder, right? And so even in that conversation, having the ability to share, not just, oh yeah, it's a great group out there, and on the East Coast doing great work. We can talk about the heart of your company and what you guys are really all about. For me, I think the first time I discovered the power of this was back in 2010. At that time, I was leading a church here in Nashville called Crosspoint Church, and we were certainly experiencing some growth. But 2010, Nashville had this massive flood, which some people remember. If not, you can go Google it and look at the pictures. It was just a tremendous force of water that flooded our city. And so, I mean, thousands of people displaced from their homes and all that. It happened over a weekend. It was a Saturday and a Sunday. And I remember a pastor friend of mine, his name was Dino Rizzo. He was at the time at a church down in New Orleans. And they had been through some hurricanes. And he called me and he said, Pete, what are you guys going to do about the flood? What's your response going to be? And I was like, I don't know, Dino. It's like, it's happening right now. He's like, well, what are you guys going to do? I was like, Dino, I don't do flood recovery, man. I have no idea. I'm a pastor. He's like, bro, if you don't step up to the plate right now and own this, you're going to miss a golden opportunity. He said, this is your chance to show people what you guys are really about. And I was like, all right, man. I had no idea what I was doing. At that time, Twitter was still really big. And so I put out a tweet that night and just said, hey, our church is going to do some flood relief starting tomorrow. I mean, the flood was still going on. We were way ahead of the curve. Just sent out a tweet, said, if anyone wants to join us and help us, bring a pair of work gloves, any other tools you got, and we'll meet in the parking lot of the church. Over 1,200 people showed up on that Monday morning, that first day. By the end of that week, we had tens of thousands of volunteers showing up. The city of Nashville made us the lead in recovery, like a church with a pastor who knows nothing about recovery, nothing about rebuilding, nothing about any, like we were just the first to show up and say, we're going to help. We don't have a plan yet, but we'll find some people to help. I'm telling you, with over the next month, we had busloads of people coming from other cities that would drive to our church parking lot, get out, and say, where can we help? And we were just putting volunteers all over the city of Nashville. Our church was never the same after that. When people ask what made it one of the top 5 fastest growing churches in the country for several years in a row, I always take them back to 2010 and the heart of generosity the church showed. When the city saw that, even people who wanted nothing to do with the church, because the church has some of the same issues that businesses have, right? People look at businesses kind of weird. They're just about money, or they're just about getting rich. Churches deal with all that for-profits deal with, as far as people's opinion of them and what they're doing behind the scenes, all that. With that, though, with that event and us getting out there like that, it just changed everything. It put down people's guards, and even people who aren't really even interested in church were like, if I ever want to go to a church, I think I'll go to that church. And then they did. And that was the first time I saw it. After that, man, we just doubled down on it. We're like, this is the easiest way for us to communicate to a city what it is that we're really about, just serving people, regardless of who they were, what their background was, whether they'd ever come to our church or not. We just got out there and we served. And we just kept doing things like that. We started a thing called the Dollar Club, which I love, where once a month we asked everybody in the church, just give $1, just give $1. And everybody give $1. And then we would take it that week and we'd take a video crew with us. And we'd go out and we'd find somebody who we could just change their life. It was usually around $8,000 to $10,000 that we collected. We'd take that out and just bless somebody, just serve somebody, do some construction on their yard or their house or whatever, help them out with some bills. And we'd come back the next week and show everybody that video, and they'd go nuts. And it was just like showing them, hey, when we all just chip in just a little bit, just $1, look at the impact that we can have. So that for me, TJ, that's the first kind of season of my life where I realize the impact that generosity can have, whether it's money, whether it's time. It really doesn't matter. Just being generous and serving people in your community, I think, can have a tremendous impact for corporations.
Oh, there's no question, man. And people buy into it because it's not self-serving. And
That's right.
it seems like it would be the opposite, right? But
Yeah.
people buy into it so quick. And what's cool about that story to me is like you just said yes, and that's
Yeah.
and so I got another coach, mentor, friend in my life. He's actually right up the road from me there in Brentwood, and he hit one of the first things he ever said that just hit me was be where your feet are. And he
Yeah.
was using it in a context of like, hey, when you're at home, turn the phone off, be there. When you're at work, be there. When you're at your kid's little league game, be there.
Be
Um,
there.
but it goes over to this giving too. Like, someone to hear you talk about that and be like, well, dang, maybe we'll have a natural disaster and we can we can show up and start being generous. But it doesn't take that. You just have to show up where you are locally. And for us with the Miracle League, it's a really cool program. And we have a lot of people in our company and other companies that have got behind it because of us getting involved. And there's people there way before we got there. But for us, people ask me all the time, how did you get tied up with that? Well, it's because I have a special needs daughter that plays ball there, and
Yeah.
I had a need. I saw how they served, and it was just a great fit. And they're local, and it was just I'm going to show up and do it. And I remember about 2020, I called Pam Dean, who's the director of our league here, and I was like, I want to be a board member. She was like, I don't ever get phone calls that just,
Yeah.
hey, I want to join the board. And she was like, it's a lot of work and it's a lot of things, and I was like, look, I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to be involved, and uh, bless this. And I can remember a time when prior to this being in ministry and stuff, and I was always like, I always had the heart for helping people. I just never had no money. And
Yeah.
now we're in this amazing opportunity here with this company, and like we had the ability to give. And so now I didn't lose the heart of giving. Now I have the ability to do it in a bigger capacity. But it started with me just taking a risk and saying, hey, I'm going to do it. And at that
Yeah.
point in time, I was just trying to figure out how could I give $500 to be that level of a sponsor, and like come out and volunteer in some way, some shape, some form. I had no idea that a year later, we'd be donating massive sums of money and have this machine and have clients who are excited because they know, hey, a portion of this is going to help that. And, have a company of people who are more excited about, how many kids signed up, how many nights do we get to go out there and volunteer. And like, it's a big deal. They get more out of showing up and volunteering on game night than the big check day, but
Yep.
it just started by saying, yeah, I mean, I have absolutely no idea apart from just circumstance. This is where I was. This is something that I found myself in, and we plugged in and engaged. And I didn't really, again, had no idea how it would be received. I'd heard people tell me, hey, you need to have something bigger than yourself. And, it was good advice, but I had no experience there. And we just started, and it escalated so quickly to the point to where our employees were like, what are we going to give? And I'd say, and they like, we need to do more. How many games are we volunteering? Let's try to do more, and now it's escalated to the point where like, they're like, we need to build a second field. And my company's like, we're going to do it. We're going to, we're going to build the field. We're going to do this stuff. And then as we expanded and we opened up our Somerville down near the coast, like Charleston area, we moved into that market, and there's a Miracle League down there. And we ended up actually donating money there before we ever even made like a rent payment. And then we just
That's
opened
awesome.
the Dunn office, and same thing. Like we connected with a thing there. And I was telling a story last Thursday, April 4th. We had our ribbon cutting up there, and I'm trying to like do last minute stuff and get ready for this whole shindig. And one of the first ladies there, she comes walking up and she's like tears in her eyes and she's like, "Thank you so much for your extreme generosity. You guys, joining the chamber, they connected me with you. I had no idea that, you guys would come through like you did. And without you, we wouldn't have been able to do this. And we lost our funding last year." And she's talking all this stuff. And I'm like, "Yeah, you're welcome." And I had no idea what she was even talking about. It didn't even come through me. My team was contacted and there was a need there for, something to raise awareness for, childhood victims and stuff. And they donated this massive sum of money, and my leadership team made that happen, and I didn't even know. And it was just the impact that it's rubbed off, and so now it's bigger than me. It's way bigger than me. It's kind of like you talking about the dollar club. Like if it was up to Pete to donate money, we might be able to buy somebody's lunch.
Yep, maybe.
But man, when everybody gets behind it, a little bit goes a long way.
It does. Yeah, it's crazy. I was looking up some stats the other day, and most of these are from Forbes. They kind of did a whole study on generosity in the corporate world, and these blew me away. So I got to share these with you. So it's kind of in the two sections, because when you think about generosity and strategic generosity inside of a corporation, there's really two main groups that are going to be impacted the most. It's going to be your own team, your own employees, and then obviously your customers or your investors. And so this first section of just the benefits to your employees alone said that 71% of employees say it's important for employers to give back through giving and volunteering. So overwhelming majority. Companies who engage their people in doing good see a 57% lower turnover on average. Anybody who runs a company knows how much turnover costs them. And if you can reduce that by 57%, that's a huge win. One more in that category, 84% of employees want their companies to offer volunteer opportunities, which I thought was like, when I first read that, I was like, I don't know about that. Like, I can see them being excited about their company giving money because it doesn't really come out of their pocket. But 84% said we want some volunteer opportunities, right? They're looking for purpose. And that plays in exactly the story you were just telling, where they love it. They get a bigger kick out of going out there and serving during that game than they even do when they get their check in the mail. And it's just about the way we're wired as human beings. Another stat, and this is based on the customer and how it impacts them. And I thought this was interesting because, again, you just told the story, and I don't know if you've ever read these stats or not, but you and I haven't talked about this. But it said this: companies with a clearly defined sense of doing good are up to 50% more likely to expand into a new market successfully. And you guys took it to even the next level, which was
Right.
we're going to lead with doing good
Right.
before we're even there and the doors are even open. And again, when you're talking about running a company or a business where you're trying to expand into new markets, into new areas, one of the contributing factors on whether or not you'll be successful or not is if you have a strategy for doing good. Uh, because no matter what you do, no matter what you offer, no matter what service you provide, there's a pretty good chance there's already a competitor in that market. You might find that little secret golden egg spot, but usually there's going to be at least some competition. And so, a great strategy to set you apart, a unique differentiator, is your generosity and caring deeply about the community. And obviously, your chances of being successful in a new market go way up when you do that.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Well, it's again, you said it. People are wired this way, and
Yep.
like as much as you like to, everybody at some point has received something, and normally it's in a time of need, and so there's some humility about around being like on the receiving end, but to turn around and have the ability to give, and like we have some employees that write checks, out of their own personal funds towards some of these things. But to know, like, I'm an administrator, right? And I've got a job and I've got a task and I move the needle. And you might not have the same ability to look at your production in an organization and really see like a clear cut KPI. Like I did this and it gained this. But when you're a part of a team and you say, man, we gave 50 grand to this, or hey, we showed up and we rented out a water park last year and had 500 special needs kids, customers, clients, family members. Like, it was just crazy, and everybody still talks about it. They're like, when are we doing that again? But that it gives them extreme buy-in because hey, I made this happen too, and they get the opportunity to go out there and give their time and energy, and it just, I don't know, it does something to your, not just your culture, but it creates glue inside your organization to where you really become bonded around this because look what we did, and it's not individualistic. It's like this big group effort, and everybody, I think, has a desire to do collective good. I think people sometimes we get so microscopic on what is the influence or what is the reason that some
Mm-hmm.
people get disengaged, like you're talking about. Like, the church could be looked at this way, business could be looked at this way, but at the end of the day, everybody has this desire to do collective good.
Yeah, yeah, it's true, and I think it comes, again, my background as a pastor and as a believer. I know not everybody would agree with this statement, but I believe that we've been created in the image of God, like the Bible talks about. And what's clear to me about God is that God was a giver. The single most famous verse that everybody knows, John 3:16, talks about for God gave, right? That's his very nature, is to give. And if we've been created in his image, it's just natural, right? That's just kind of what we do. And so when we give, we're doing one of the truest things we can to how we've actually been created. And I think that's why it feels so right. It feels so good. I've got a client I've been working with for a couple months, and he's CEO of a very large family business. They do like plumbing, electricity, have like 500 employees. Really successful guy, but he's the reason he hired me is like he's like, I've lost my mojo. That was his words. I've lost my mojo. I was like, I don't know exactly what that is. You're gonna have to explain that a little more, but we'll figure it out. But we were doing something, I call it the energy audit. So I do this with a lot of my clients, is just trying to help them figure out what people, what tasks drain them, what tasks give them energy. And we were doing this over about a 2 week period with him. Well, in the middle of that, he attends a church, but he's not active at all. But they had this thing I thought was really cool. They called it Million Meals. And over a 3 day period, it's a pretty large church. Over a 3 day period, this church was going to pack 1 million meals for kids around the world who are starving. And so he, for some reason, signs up for it. It's like the first thing he's ever signed up for at church. And he takes himself, he's got 3 kids, takes his kids with him. And he calls me on his way home. He's like, Pete, you're not going to believe this. He's like, I have a greater sense of purpose. I have more energy in my life right now than I have had in years. And I just spent a day with my family in a warehouse packing meals. And he's like, explain that to me. I was like, oh, that's an easy one for me to explain to you. But in that moment, just the act of generosity, the act of him giving his time and a little bit of effort, and it just clicked with him. And my thing was, dude, you got 500. Imagine what we could do in your community with the workforce you have if we figured out a way for them to experience what you just experienced. Like, if it helps you get your mojo back, imagine what it'll do for your 500 employees. And for some reason, it takes some of us a little bit longer to kind of trip into this. I feel really lucky that because of what I did as a pastor, I kind of discovered this and saw this real early in my life. But for some of us, it takes a lot longer, and it's never too late, right? I don't think, you might disagree, TJ. I don't think people are just born generous or born selfish.
Right.
I think that generosity is a muscle, and I think that we have it inside of us. We have that generous spirit inside of us, and we have a selfish spirit inside of us at all times, right? And so I'm always battling that. I certainly don't want to come across in this podcast like I'm Mr. Crazy Generous and I'm just giving everything away. I have moments where I'm presented with an opportunity to be generous with time or money, and I just feel selfish. Like, I'm not going to do it. I don't want, it's going to cost me too much. And so I don't always get this right. But my point I'm trying to make is we all have this inside of us, generosity and selfishness. And it's kind of like I compare it to courage and fear. I don't think there's just courageous people and then a bunch of fearful people. I think we all have courage and fear inside of us. And in any given moment, you get to choose which one you're going to lead with. And so, in moments where I express being courageous and I step into a moment, it's not that I don't have fear. There's plenty of fear there. I just choose to have faith in that moment. I choose to go with the courage. It's like I heard that quote a long time ago that said, "Fear is wetting your pants. Courage is doing whatever you've been called to do with wet pants." And it's that kind of idea. You just keep going. And I feel that way about generosity and selfishness. They're both always going to be there. You just get to choose from moment to moment, circumstance to circumstance, which one you're going to lead with. And I think the vast majority of times in my life when I've led with generosity, I have never regretted it, not a single time. It has always, in one way or another, come back to bless me in some way. And that's why I try to the best of my ability to lean towards generosity.
100%, man. Like that's a great way to look at it because you do have the choice, and a
Yep.
lot of people get it wrong. And I think some of it is because of the fear of, well, I believe a certain way, and you know, but that's not necessarily indicative in my company, and all these kind of different things. So having the ability to just go and realize that you can you can experience things and you may have a very great sense of why that is and what's behind that and all that, and other people are just experiencing the joy, and they may not understand what it is, but they know that it's there. And
Yep.
it's been really cool. And there's two sides of this. Is when I met you up there on your farm, it was I was talking a little bit about my past and connecting the dots. And you're like, I knew it. Like somebody's copying the church's playbook because here's
Yep.
one thing for certain is not all of them, but they're in the newer wave of like how do you reach this day and age and how do you recruit people. And one thing you have to become masterful at inside of that atmosphere is volunteers. And like
That's right.
if you can get momentum and energy with a volunteer, how much more can you get it when you have the ability to pay those people to
Right.
be around you? And so that 100% I would credit a lot of this to being in those ditches and being a part of church plants in the past and being in that world and seeing the momentum. And I go to a fantastic church here locally now. It's a huge church for our area, and they're multi-site, and it's a big energy machine to get people aligned. But you also see the power of what happens when it happens, and it happens well, and you get to see the rewards of it. And you see that week after week there's just a win, 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 and you get so infatuated with seeing collective wins that everybody's going to have losses, but they don't sting quite
Right.
as bad when you've had so many great victories. And then the other
Yep.
side of that is last week again at that ribbon cutting in Eastern North Carolina, I had a couple come up to me. They're like, "Man, we found you guys online, and like we started watching your podcast, and we just feel super compelled to build with you." And he's like, and the husband goes, "One thing is, I like that y'all are a Christian business, but y'all aren't beating it down people's throats." And I was like, I've never came out and said, "Hey, we're a Christian business," but it's evident in what we do that it's different. There's an element of different, and I promise you that we are as imperfect of people as they come, but we try to do things with a sense of excellence, and there is a higher purpose to everything that we do. It's not the Ross and TJ show. It ain't, there's a whole lot of that leaning into selfishness that we could do
Yeah.
and reward ourselves plentiful with. But we just make a concerted effort to keep the main thing, and we want to be people first. And
Yeah.
it's been huge and just a big dynamic to our success. And a lot of people ask, like, how in the world have y'all done what you've done? And to be honest with you, some of it I couldn't answer, but with the limited resources that I have, I've tried to be a good steward of my ability to just not make it about me, because I promise you, as fun as this is and as successful as it's been, I've burnt many things to the ground. Um,
Yep.
and I've had my hand in so many different things, and I mean, I've leaned on my own ability so many times. And,
Yeah.
when this thing took off, like even still with scale, we dedicated a percentage of our income to giving. And as we
Yeah.
grow, that number gets bigger. And there is a tendency to go, well, I mean, isn't that enough? Like, we'll just put a cap on, and we have to fight that resistance because it's like, no, if we feel like that our giving is too big of a numbers because we've got too small of a vision, and we need to go out there and
Yeah.
figure out what are we missing because we've got too internally focused, because there's definitely something there that could take what we have and use it. And that's another part of it is not trying to give with the intention of dictating what's done with that money.
Mm.
And I've been very clear in that too. And again, I think it's partially because of some of my background, but like when we give to an organization, it's we believe in you and we believe in what you're doing. Now go do good with this, and just empowering them to be better versions of what they were already, and just using what we had as fuel for the rocket. I don't need to rebuild your rocket, because
Yeah.
it can become egotistical at times too. And so we try to just keep it clear and concise. Hey, this is what we're doing. We're all about it. We've allocated this much money every single time. Every month we move it and we give and we do all these things. And like I told my team, I'm like, look, at some point, let's come up with some more things to give to. And again,
Yeah.
it rubs off the organization. I remember scrolling Facebook like last fall, and I'm like going down through there, and I see this poster for a drag racing event or something, and it's got a big Barndo. It's like, thank you so much to the Barndo Co. And I'm like, what? And what? Matter of fact, Olivia, the sales agent that you've been talking to,
Yeah.
she
Yeah.
is very involved in that community, and they were going to an
Awesome.
event, and I think it was in Georgia. I'm not 100% sure, but they were trying to raise money for local kids, like pack a backpack or something. And she wrote a check and donated it and just tied us into it. And it was just I love seeing it because again, it's bigger than just building barns and making money and
Yeah.
all that kind of
Yep.
stuff.
Yeah. It's kind of like this. I think everybody's on this journey, right? And in my executive coaching, I get to work with some crazy successful people. And what's interesting to me is that often they've fallen into this trap where they're chasing some external goal to fulfill an internal need, right? So, and the problem with that is obvious, which is no external goal can ever fix an internal need. And so they're chasing these goals, and often they're wanting me to help them achieve 5x this, 10x this. I'm happy to do that, and I'm happy to help them get to where it is they want to go. But part of the work I'm doing as we're getting to this goal is helping them understand that actually achieving that goal is not going to quiet that demon that they hear inside of them. It's just not. I've seen it too many times. In fact, it's going to get louder. They're going to feel more dissatisfied because they're going to be like, I just spent the last 5 years trying to hit that goal and I hit it and I don't feel any better. And so there's other values that have to be tapped into, and generosity is one of those. I mean, you can help people wrap some of those other values around the pursuit of that external goal. It makes the journey towards that goal a lot smoother, and they're a lot more satisfied when they actually hit that goal. And so helping people understand, how to steward their success, steward their resources, steward their employees, steward their vision. I think it's a really important, all of it's important to really help an organization be healthy and set up for long-term success, not just some quick flash pan success. If you want to do this for a long time and have a big impact, you're going to have to weave some of these things into these goals.
Oh yeah, yeah. The finding fulfillment in something is not it's in the pursuit of. And so like
Yeah.
if you hit a goal, you set a new one. You're never
Yep.
arriving. And that's one thing that we preach to our leadership team all the time, is because it's an ever-changing process. Every time you launch a new location or you bring on new staff, or you have some projection of like this big revenue target, that's the destination, but you got to fall in love with the travel. We're going to put our head down and go that way, but we may look up and find out that hey, that we didn't even go there. We got here, and there's a new mission, new vision, and so you just fall in love with the process of doing what you're doing. And in 2021, the goal was 8 or 10 houses. That's a
Mm-hmm.
win. And now we're in 3 separate states and all this stuff, and we've got over 100 active jobs going, and it's like it was too big for me to even fathom at that moment in time. And how much of a disservice would it have been if I'd have just had such a narrow sight and that just be the goal and say, well, we did
Yeah.
10, let's just stop, and we'll do 11 next year. And I think a lot of people get
Yep.
stuck in that loop because they're looking for that 10% growth. And there's definitely an element of risk to growing as fast as we have. It's like, you know, you've packed the powder keg and you're going to light it and you're not sure if it's going to blow
Yep.
up or blow out. And in the beginning, we had everybody like one of Ross, his favorite thing was say, I feel like we're on a rocket ship. And one of our coaches said, we just got to figure out, is it, are you the Spaceship Challenger or
Yeah.
is it going to be a
Right.
successful launch? And, but being aware of that has also kept us pretty grounded to know that, like, hey, we will never do something for the sake of doing it. It's got to align with the mission. It's got to align with what we're doing, and put blinders up, because it's easy to get that shiny object syndrome, and then you're chasing 1,000 different directions, and you can lose sight of everything. And
Yeah.
the moment that you put profit over people or income over impact or any of those magical sayings that everybody has, it's like it'll realign your company and it will not be the same. And that's where the as with growth, the biggest fear is always, I hope we don't get too corporate. And I'm like, well, define
Yep.
corporate, because corporate is a good thing,
Yep.
but the reason it gets a bad taste is because you get people in and people lost sight of the mission and the vision
Yeah.
and the core
Right.
values, and it became about assets and roles and responsibilities and income and hitting quarterly targets, and those targets were only numerical revenue associated targets and had nothing to do with individual growth and team growth. And so it's a good thing. And I'd never been in a partnership, let alone a 50-50 with someone prior to this business, but it's been phenomenal because I get to kind of be the dreamer and get to be the big, like, hoorah, like, motivational guy. And Ross is very, and it's a great balance because we always are holding each other in check. Like, sometimes I have a tendency to be too lax,
Mm-hmm.
and then he
Mm-hmm.
has a tendency to be too domineering. And so we end
Yeah.
up being a perfect, weaving a perfect web between the two of us to where we have balance. And
Yeah.
that's been critical. But so to spin this, I would say, if you were to give some insight, and I'm putting you on the spot here, but to a company starting out, or maybe it's a company that's been running for a while, and they're like, we want to get generous.
Yeah.
And I feel like we've touched it a little bit, but, like, what are some things you would say, like, how do we start?
Yeah. I think so. If I'm sitting across from a CEO of any size organization and they're saying we want to start, I don't know where to start. I think I'd ask a series of questions, and I think I'd start with, tell me where you currently feel the most fear and the most stingy, right? So if that's towards your employees, if that's your view towards your employees, you tend to be a little bit stingy. You have some fear. You feel like for them, this is just a job. They don't really want to be here. They're not really on board. I'd say start by being generous with them. If your fear is your customer base, then and you feel stingy towards them, then I'd say start there with your generosity. Find a way to be generous to your customers. If it's your community and you feel like you're at odds with the politics and the codes and something in the community is holding you back, and that's where you feel fear and you feel a little bit of angst and you want to be stingy towards them, push back with generosity. Go towards the fear. Let that kind of be a compass for you, because it's probably an indicator. There's something going on there culturally with your employees or with your customers or with your community. And I'd start wherever that angst, tension is the greatest, because nothing melts down differences quicker than generosity. When you're generous to somebody else, genuinely generous from the bottom of your heart, man, in that moment, what happens is you're not building a case any longer. You're building a bridge. And once that bridge is built, all kinds of things can open up. So I think that's where I'd say. And then the second thing I'd say is just get started. Don't overthink it. You mentioned that earlier. Don't overthink the strategy. I think some people get so lost on, well, what if we support this organization and, what if they do something bad, or what if they come out politically, for or against something that we're not for or against, or what it's, we overthink this thing to death. We can over strategize generosity. Just pick a place, my preference for them would always be if there's a personal connection. You had a personal connection. You had experienced that through your kids, and you saw the power and the impact, and it meant a lot to you personally. So that was an easy and the right next step for you guys. Support that. So, I don't think you have to overthink this and overthink the strategy. That'll come over time, right? Just get started and do something generous in one of those three areas. And I would pick the one that there's the most tension with inside of your company right now.
And that's a remarkable way to look at it, to say start there. If like with the employee, most people are thinking like outside, external, but you could be generous
Oh,
right there. And that's a
absolutely.
fantastic way to start, because it generosity breeds generosity. So the moment
Yeah.
you breathe that into your employees, it's going to expand beyond them and beyond and beyond and beyond. And it's a powerful thing, man. That's a great perspective. So I appreciate
Well,
that.
it's like, how can we expect them to be generous if we're not being generous towards them, right? It's like, you know, everything rises and falls on leadership. There's a reason that your team gets excited about generosity and excited about serving. They've seen it modeled, and they know it's important to you guys, so it's important to them. Um, and but expecting them somehow to just organize themselves and go out, like it could happen, but it's not likely. And
Right.
so I think we have to model that which we want to see, and reward it when we see it, because what gets rewarded gets repeated. And before long, it just becomes a cultural thing. It's just become a part of you guys' DNA. Like, the only decisions you guys probably are making these days about generosity is, where is it going to go? And
Yeah.
how much can we give? You're
That's
no
right.
longer debating whether or not you're going to do it,
Yeah.
whether it's important. You're past that. That was stage one. Now it's just an overflow.
Yep. Oh, that's it, man. That's incredible. So how about you, man? Like, yeah, you talk about seeing me and me moving around, but you're a mover and shaker too. What all you got going on? If I'm gonna turn you around and I'm gonna let you be selfish
Yeah,
for a minute. Like, what all you got cooking?
man, I got a lot going on these days, and I'm loving every bit of it. We're in a great season of life. I've got, my life's a little different than many. I've got three older boys. So I have a 22-year old, a 20-year old, and an 18-year old, and then I have a 2.5-year old. So, man, it's like I'm getting to be a dad all over again, which is awesome. But I did spend a lot of time thinking and praying and strategizing about whether or not I could do this again. But I sat down one day and I started to make a pros and cons list, and I stopped about halfway through. And I was like, you know what? The By far the best thing I've done with my life is be a dad, by far. Like, that, nothing that I've ever done or experienced even compares with it. I was like, if God gives me the opportunity to be a dad again, why would I not jump at that? And so I did, and just really grateful. So yeah, we've got four kids running around. Not three of them are almost completely out of the house. I still got one that's here that's not in college yet, but so busy with kids, busy with the exec coaching and then the speaking. And we're hopefully, building a Barndo here real soon with you guys. And just grateful, man. I really am. If you asked me 10 years ago if this is what my life would look like, I would have said, nope, absolutely not,
Right.
but it is. And I've just continued to see God's grace, man, in my life. And I'm grateful for the opportunities and grateful for conversations like this and meeting new friends and partnering together on things. It's just life's an adventure, and I'm just grateful to be on the journey.
Yeah, man. I would say I can feel you on the span, because I have a 23 3-year-old and a 2-year-old and everything in between. You know, I got a whole squad. And you know, sometimes I wonder if I'm making a soft new kid or if I was too hard on the old kid. So it's like, I tell my wife all the time, I said, she's like, this got easier. I'm like, I think we just got more experienced. And, you know, so it's like anything, man. But I would agree, man, being a dad is the center point of everything. Yeah. And I try my best not to lose sight of it, because there was a day and age, man, where they were not my focus. I was too busy worried about creating the money and the things to really spend time with them and just be present. And now I'm in a position where that, you know, it gets to take priority in my life, and it's awesome. But man, I love meeting you and hanging out with you, and just, you know, you're always uplifting, even if it's just social media posts. I mean, you're just you have that energy about you, man, where you just bring out the best in people. So I appreciate you taking some time to jump on here with me and spend some minutes talking about this, because I know it's near and dear to your heart, you know, and that's, again, I think we had common ground there. And, you know, I just, for me, I want as many people to be successfully, as possible.
Yes.
And anything that I found to make it easier or more beneficial, and like not just have the money success or the business success, but also family success and the generosity component. I want to pass that along freely, because there was so many years where I would be winning in one area and completely losing in all the others. And now I'm trying to find balance amongst the pillars of my life, you know, and keep everything in sync, because you'll never find perfect balance, but harmony, I guess, is a better word. Like, how do I do this harmoniously so that everything is benefiting and everything in the garden's growing, not just the roses, and then the roses die because I start taking care of the tomatoes, you know? So it's like, but man, again, super thankful that you took some time to jump on here and speak about this, because again, I think this is the singular most powerful thing that anyone can do to grow and scale a business is to get behind something bigger than themselves.
Yeah, I think it's huge, and you guys are doing great at it, TJ. I'm proud of you guys. I'm proud of what you've started. I'm proud of the way you're stewarding it. Proud of the stuff you guys are building. Like, you got all the components there, right, to a great company. You created a great culture, and sky's the limit for you guys. And really proud of what you guys are doing.
All right, man. Well, enjoy the rest of your day, man. Go love on that little baby. She's the cutest. So. And,
we'll do it, man. We'll do it.
All right, man. We'll be in touch. See you, buddy.
All right. Peace.
Thanks, guys, for tuning in to the Barndo Show podcast. If you're watching on YouTube or wherever you're listening to this content, hit subscribe so you don't miss an episode. And then be sure to check us out on all of our social media platforms at the Barndo Co. Super simple to find us. And then when you're ready to dive in a little more, maybe look around some of our available floor plan options, or take a look at the gallery of our work, or maybe you're ready to connect with our team and explore what it looks like to build your dream barndominium, you can visit us online at thebarndoco.com.